Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 34 of the Fair Housing Insiders. Thank you for joining us on our show. Again, we're so grateful to our community. Today, we're going to be talking about reasonable accommodation forms and forms in general when it comes to what you should have internally, what you can accept from a resident. So it's an interesting topic. We're looking forward to Kathy's feedback. So Kathy, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Jonathan. I think there's lots of difficulty for housing providers who are out there on the front lines trying to decide how to handle all of these various reasonable accommodation requests. So today, I think we should focus on when is the information a resident gives their leasing staff adequate, and when is it not adequate? So then the leasing staff have to go forward, for instance, with a verification form. So I think making a difference between when you need to go forward with a verification form and when you don't should be helpful to a lot of folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, as we were preparing for recording this show too, I liked your comment about how there's we could very easily feel like our forms or bust, so to speak, and we can't necessarily have that approach. So let's look at a couple of scenarios. So Kathy, will get your feedback on. So we have a resident who is looking for a designated parking space, and they come in to the office making that request, but they have no documentation of their own, and the leasing professional is asking them to fill out a form. What would you say? What would you do? What should leadership have in place for that community?
So, Mr. Green, if you wouldn't mind just filling out this form so that we can process your request for a designated parking space.
No, I don't want to fill out your form. You know I'm disabled. I need that parking spot.
Well, we do need to verify the need for this request. I can fill it out for you if you'd like.
Well, the first thing we need to remember on this scenario is, first of all, can you tell that the resident is disabled, for instance, has a mobility disorder? If so, you don't get that verified. Always remember that. But maybe you have no idea. You can't see that this resident is disabled, or maybe you've never even met with this resident. You've never seen this resident. It's all done over the phone. In that case, then you would ask the resident to authorize a verification form and to give you the name and address of whatever verifier, third-party professional the resident wants to use, and then you send out the verification form. You don't just have to take the word of the resident. Now, if they don't want to authorize your verification form and they just refuse to do it, then you have to say to them, you need to get us this information from a verifier. And we can't process your reasonable accommodation request until you do. It either needs to come in the form of this verification form, or, for instance, a verifier, a doctor, whoever, could write a letter or something like that.
Okay, very good. So that's very, very helpful. So nice scenario, nice explanation, Kathy. So let's flip it around. So we'll look at the same characters in our next scene, but in this case, Mr. Green does have some form of verification available for the leasing professional and presents that. So let's look at our scene, and we'll get your comments on how management should respond to that.
So, Mr. Green, if you wouldn't mind just filling out this form so that we can process your request for a designated parking space.
Actually, I figured you'd need some kind of verification, so I have this letter from my doctor that should provide you with all of the information you need.
Okay, great. It looks like the doctor's contact information is on here so that if we do need more information for verification, we'll be able to reach out to him.
So in this scenario, we have a resident who's brought in a doctor's note, which is very common. For those of you who are out there dealing with reasonable accommodations, you see these doctor's notes a lot. And the key is this: the doctor's note may be adequate for verification. If it is, you cannot insist on using your form. So if the doctor's note is adequate to give you the information you need to make a decision, you accept it, and that's the end of the verification. If it's not, then you have the resident authorize your verification form, and you go ahead and send it out with the questions that were not answered on the doctor's note. The main point is this: it's great to have forms. And we certainly here at FHI think everybody needs to have good, efficient, updated forms. But you can't demand that your residents use them. You can demand that the resident provide the information you need to make an informed decision on the request. You just can't insist that it be on your form if they get it to you in some other manner. So remember that one of the most difficult things with reasonable accommodations is that we want you to be consistent in the way you process things, but you have to deal with each individual request the way it's presented to you. And sometimes because of that, you can't be as consistent as you'd really like to be. For instance, always requiring that they fill out your request form. You really can't require it. You can recommend it, but if they absolutely refuse, then you fill out your reasonable accommodation request form with the information that they gave you. And then with your verification, if you can't tell that they're disabled and need whatever it is that they've asked for, then the question is, how do you get that information into your file? It's either using your verification form or in some other manner, like a doctor's letter, that might be adequate. So you can't always treat every single request exactly like the last one. And I know that's frustrating, but that's just the way this law is.
Yeah. Now, thank you, Kathy. Excellent explanation. And I think our audience understands that it's like you can't, there is no cookie cutter approach. So what does that mean for leadership? Well, it means more training, like make sure that your on-site staff understand that there could be these potential different scenarios. And that's why we present these scenarios. They're good teaching aids. So feel free to use this as one of your monthly fair housing talks, if that's what you have for your organization, to help impress this point that we're trying to get across for this episode. So thank you so much, Kathy. So to use a form or not to use a form, that'll be my sort of Shakespearean way to end this episode. So thank you, Kathy, for your comments. Episode 34, using reasonable accommodation forms and making sure that you understand what a resident can and cannot do for verification. So thank you for being here. Make sure you give us a thumbs up. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our channel, share this with your community. And if you're interested in learning more about our online courses, you can go to our website, fairhousinginstitute.com. We'll look forward to seeing you again at our next episode. Take care, everyone.